Yeah. Okay. Today we're going to do the end of chapter 6 in Tanya. Today's Tuesday. Chayenu, it's page 59. If you're using the Steinsaltz Tanya, it would be on page 183. But for those that have Chayenu, it's 59. Okay. So let's, I think here's how I want to do this. I want to read it pretty straightforward. And then I'm going to give you some of the bonuses that I noticed in the Steinsaltz Tanya, which are really very geschmack, or really dot connecting. Okay, so yesterday we said that the focus of chapter 6 is to explain the makeup of the animal soul and the expression of the animal soul. The makeup, we said, is the mirror image of the makeup is the mirror image of the 10 spheros. The converse would be the 10 crowns of impurity. In other words, you have love and you have lust, right? Similar but more self-serving version of it. And so on. You have Chachma Bina Das, that's about self-serving, right? You have the Midos that are self-serving, like lust or Gevur, be anger, or etc. And that's the makeup of the animal soul. In other words, you have this shadow version of yourself. That makes sense, right? You got a holy makeup of yourself, of your capacities, love, awe, courage. And then you have the shadow flip side of those capacities. That's what the animal soul is. I want to keep saying that's what the animal soul is. You have these capacities in you. You have lust in you. You have anger in you. I mean, potentially. Everybody has it. You have an animal soul, you have it. Okay. But that's what it is. It doesn't mean that's what it does. What does it do to express these animal soul capacities? What does it do? You have to do something. You can't, these are all potentials. Kochot literally means potentials. These are potential capacities. How do you bring the potential animal soul capacities to the fore? You have to express it. How do you express it? Through garments. What are garments of the animal soul? Thought, speech, and action that are not for Hashem. That includes even things that are neutral, but they're just for self-preservation or serving purposes. That's like everything in our world. We said everything in our world is, everything that's mundane, even if it's kosher, it's not sinful. But the mere fact that it is not for the sake of Hashem, it's not directed with kavanah for a godly purpose, it is coming from klipa and sitra achra. The side, the other side, the shell side. Okay. Continuing on that vein, we start today. Anything, however, that does not surrender itself to God, but considers itself as if it is a thing separate unto itself, which is everything in this world for the most part, does not receive its life from the holiness of God, because if there's no bittul, if there's no surrender, if there's not clear bittul, surrender to the divine, then it has independence. If it has independence, that is a concealment. That is klipa. Okay. It's not getting its life force from the holiness of God. And with holy, in other words, it does not get doesn't get life force from holiness. What is it getting life force? It's alive. God's creating it. It doesn't get its life force from the pnimiut. Pnimiut means, another word for holiness means from the pnimiut. Pnimiut means face to face, from the inward desire of God towards that creation, and as is received by the creation's desire to connect to God.
Wow.
It doesn't get from the primiut, the inner aspect of holiness, from its very essence and core, but it gets it from, as we mentioned yesterday, achorayim, the hind part, so to speak. As we mentioned yesterday, and this is, I could have saved it for today, that anything in this world that is not batel, it is not surrendered to God, then it's getting its life from God in a backsided way. In other words, it's not God's truest desire in creation. It is all scaffolding. It's all, as it says in the Shines, auxiliary components to the main purpose of a being having a relationship with God. If it's not surrendering, which is the primary relationship to God, then it is just scaffolding, in my own words. That's correct. This limited form of life force, next page 60, reaches the klipot by descending degree by degree through myriads levels in the, I like the better word in the shines. These are the chain-like descent of the worlds, or the unfolding succession of the worlds in the manner of cause and effect. B'tzimtzumim rabim, and with many tzimtzums, many contractions, hiding the light, hiding the true light of God's being the reality of things. And so greatly diminished does the light and life force become diminution after diminution until it is able to become contracted and clothed in a manner of exile.
What?
And giving life separate from holiness, giving it vitality and existence, causing that object to pass from non-existence to existence, so that it does not return to its original state of non-existence as it was before it was created. Because it's, again, everything needs life from God.
Man.
It's just that this beings that hide on God are getting it through a lot of filters that hide it, but it's still from God. And nothing can exist without constant energy from God. Then how can anything be so? How can things look so detached from God at the face of them? Because the energy is going through filters. That's hiding it. That's the answer. That is why he says on page 61, this world, being the lowest world of all the succession of worlds, from the highest spiritual worlds down to this one where it is very much concealed, God's presence. This is why this world, with all it contains, is called the world of klipot and sitra achra. Again, the two almost interchangeable words, slightly different, but they're the world of klipot and sitra achra. This is the world. The world of angels is not called the world of klipot. They have some level of filter there. They don't get God unfiltered entirely, because then they'd blow up. But what they get, but some filter, but they're cognizant of God being the true reality, even if it's a filtered way. We, on the other hand, the default is no awareness of God's, we're not defaulted into seeing the divine reality of things.
What was your last sentence?
Our world, the default setting on the operating system of this world is what? You are not aware of the divine energy of everything.
That's not true. I don't believe that. I think any human being with a mind, half a mind is
with a mind. So mind means you have to go to school. It means you have to think. It means you have to not get into your physical senses as much. You have to probe beyond the physical senses. In other words, the default of the physical senses is not the mind, is not this deeper physics understanding. I'm not saying you can't get there, but it's not the default setting.
I don't know what you mean by default setting, Rabbi.
Why is the
now you're blacked out. I can't see you.
Okay, I'm back. The default setting is you see rocks and trees and animals and people.
No, beyond people and animals and everything, there's eventually you're going to realize that God has to exist, that there's God.
Eventually. So you're saying eventually. In other words, I'm not arguing that the whole idea of a human being is having an abstract mind to appreciate the reality behind the surface.
That's why God created us.
But that's not the default setting. That's not the default state.
Well, I mean, somebody right out of the womb is
Right.
maybe
Exactly.
what you mean by default.
Exactly.
So what you're saying, that isn't obvious.
So I'm saying the physical reality, you have a mind that can cut beneath the veneer of the physical reality, but it takes work.
It takes education. That's
Education. But the basic awareness of a person initially, until they get educated and think and ponder, is you see physical stuff. You see a physical cause and effect world. That's what you see. That's what you sense. You have five senses. The mind can go beyond the five senses. Anyways, the point I'm saying, that's how this world in Kabbalah, it says it's called the world of Klippa, the world of concealment, the world of the dark side, the other side, not the dark side, the other side, because it's a world that is characterized by concealment, like total concealment. You have to work very hard to not get fazed by and not believe what you initially see. This is also why all the affairs of this world are severe and evil, and the wicked prevail in it, as it's written in Hein.
I didn't hear the last sentence, Rabbi. All the affairs of this world, where are you reading?
I'm reading on page 61. Any of the bold words, that's what I'm reading. I'm not reading any of the other lines. Anything that's bold is what I'm reading. This is also why all the affairs of this world are severe and evil, and the wicked prevail in it, as it's written in Eitz Chaim, book of Kabbalah, portal 42, end of chapter 4. Sounds pretty negative, huh? Pretty harsh world. Harsh neighborhood, this world. So let's read this.
Women don't prevail in this world. We have to fight evil off. That's our job.
That's our job. But the default setting, the default meaning, if you don't do the work, people, their negative impulses will carry.
I agree.
Our whole life's mission is to not give in to the evil and to the prevailing notion of might makes right.
Yeah, you can be fooled.
That's not the default setting. That's not the way it was in the cradle of civilization. To be sure, now let's read this gray box. It's a gloss, but I'll tell you why. We're reading everything, but I'll tell you why it's relevant. To be sure, this world contains the 10 spheres of the world of Asiya. The Alter Rebbe is not saying it sounds like this is a really bad place. It's like, bad, lurking in every corner. Let's clarify. He's not saying it's bad and it has to stay bad. Because in truth, this world, to be sure, I'm continuing the gray box in the bold, this world, our world, contains the 10 sefirot of the world of Asiya. The four worlds, Asiya, Bria, Yitzira, Atzilus. This is the lowest one, the world of action. But it has sefirot. It has some divine, blueprint, even if it's a filtered blueprint, as it's written in Eitz Chaim, portal 43. And within those 10 sefirot of Asiya are contained the next worlds. Why is it called Seder Hishtalshlut, a chain-like descent? It's because everything exists on lower planes, it seems like. The same thing exists on a higher, more sublime, aware of God level. It exists in the next level in a more filtered, more hidden way. But it's like the same thing, but it's like a spiral staircase going down. You're going back to the same kind of structure, just in a lower realm. And within those, the 10 sefirot of Yetzira is the 10 sefirot of Bria. And in them, the 10 sefirot of Bria is the 10 sefirot of Atzilut, in which abides, we said, that is the Atzilut is the word Eitzel, means near, adjacent, or shining, because it's very much adjacent to the infinite light. It's the first world that is cognizant of an infinite light. But it's a world, so there's a certain level of, won't get into the details of what those worlds are, but, right? Okay. Thus, the Or Ein Sof, which means we're going back to the infinite, unlimited light of God, pervades this entire lowest world, our world, by being clothed in the 10 sefirot of the four worlds. Atzila, Bria, Tzia, Asiya, as is written in Hein, Portal 47, chapter 2, and Sefer Gulam, chapter 20.
I don't know why they call it the lowest world, because that somehow does not sit right with me.
So I'll answer your question. The lowest world means, it doesn't mean the loser world. It doesn't mean like the world that's, the worst world. It means this is a picture about how creation and purpose. In the Steinsaltz Tanya, he has a good line in one of the sidebars that we just said. Now we said two things. We said this world is the lowest world. What does it mean, lowest? That in the system of constant filtering, of tzimtzum, of God starting with infinite light and then hiding it, and then there's being a first world where it's a pretty holy world, but it's still a world, and then you filter it further, and then you get to a lower world where there's less awareness, and lower. We're the lowest. We have the least amount of awareness of God vis-a-vis all of the worlds in creation, all the spiritual worlds. The physical has the least. It's the lowest in its natural
It's a world we're trying
awareness of its natural awareness to God's presence. We are the lowest in that capacity. We're the blind man, so to speak, in the worlds.
Not really. We are critical. We are critical to the whole.
But you're not apples. It's not apples to apples. You're saying things that are not on point. With all due respect, that's not. I didn't say we're not critical. I didn't say we're not the most important world. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying in this system of Hashem's of awareness of the divine, we are the most handicapped. That's it. It doesn't mean we're the worst. It doesn't mean we're not critical. It just means in our tool belt, in our makeup, we are the most visually impaired to divinity.
Why?
We're the ones who can set the cosmos at rest better than
Okay,
the
I
world.
just answered that. That's not you're not hearing what I'm saying, so I'm going to move on. A better way to put it in the Steinsaltz Tanya, it says, don't take this. If you look at what we just said now, is that this world, a precise definition of our world would be, quote unquote, from the Steinsaltz Tanya, bottom of 187, quote unquote, it's the darkest possible world that can still be illuminated anew.
Wow.
It's an optimistic view of the world. As we just said in this kind of Kabbalistic gloss, if you didn't have the gloss, it sounds like a really bad world, right? Bad, hidden, bad people prevail. That's not the point. The point is that it's the darkest world that can still right itself. It can still be illuminated, but its default state is darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission is to work really, really hard with every fiber of our being in life to illuminate that darkness. So Alan, and that is actually why, we'll get to it much later, why it's the most critical world. Its darkness is not like, by the way, it's actually because it's the darkest, that's why it's the most critical, because we, through hard work, can illuminate it.
Wow.
The world of angels, they don't have darkness in order to illuminate it. There's no darkness to begin with, or less darkness, whatever.
We have a job.
That's why we have a job.
We have a job.
We have a secure job.
That's why I said it.
Okay. So that is, that's that. Page 62. However, we're going to end off with some interesting. So at this point in the Tanya, we said at this point in the Tanya, we're trying again. Let's look back. We're trying to explain the animal soul. The animal soul, its makeup, is from klipa and sitra achra / klipa hyphen sitra achra, and a lot of concealment, which makes it the animal soul, or our human soul, for that matter, the human self-preservation drive, very autonomous, very into its self. Anything that does to self-preserve, that's not divine directed, is a further expression of concealment. Now we're going to learn that not all concealment is created equal. However, the klipot are divided into two categories, one lower than the other. If you notice, I was reading the Shines, I really appreciate this next idea. If you look in the language, when you read Tanya a lot, you become more familiar with the terms, as much as, whatever, basic working terms. If you'll notice, till now, we kept talking about klipa / sitra achra, which are terms used for kind of the same thing, the forces of concealment and darkness that our world operates by, right? Klipa / sitra achra. Now he drops sitra achra. Why does he stop? If you're so careful till now to say that this world and the animal soul is part of it is klipa and sitra achra, right? Because and each of those terms represent klipa is the husk, and sitra achra represents the absence of light, of divinity, the other side. It's other. But why does he not use the term now, sitra? Why does he now just talk about klipa? You could say he's being short-term, shorthand. You don't want to repeat yourself a million times. But it's a very powerful thing. You can't, what do you call it? You can't, he's now going to slice or differentiate levels of klipa. But you can't differentiate levels of sitra achra. You can't differentiate levels of absence because it's not defined anything. It's just the absence of holiness, of God. Right, but I'm saying you can't. I'm sure you could probably within absence and vacuum. You could maybe, but I guess it's hard to differentiate between like this is not. Well, it's not plus two and not plus one. It's just not. It just. But klipa, while it is also a form of not God, but it's the active version of not God. It's the husk. What's a husk? Husk protects fruit. In other words, it's showing darkness has a purpose. Concealment has a purpose. It's protecting, or it's scaffolding, whatever, the fruit inside, or in our case, the divine inside. Meaning it's focusing on the positive definition of darkness versus the absence definition of darkness. And that's why now as we're going to differentiate levels of klipa, you could do that with the term klipa. You can't do that with the term sitra achra. Okay. However, the klipot are divided into two categories, one lower than the other. The lower category consists of what we call shalosh klipot hatmeot, viraot lagamri, the three completely unclean, impure, and evil klipot, contain no good whatsoever. In the prophet Ezekiel's vision of the divine chariot, which he saw, the famous thing we read on Shavuos, the Ezekiel's vision, he saw and described the forces that conceal godliness. He described it as a storm wind, a great cloud, and a flaring fire. Obviously, everything in a prophetic vision is allegorical, but the terms are the terms. So these are whatever, I forget why those things, I mean, the cloud is probably, it's murky, murky, dark, whatever. The point is that he talked about three terms. So we now call the lower levels called three, the three baddies, the three, impure klipas. But it's just really one category, three. I'm not differentiating within three. Okay, from them flow and are derived the souls of all the nations of the world and the sustaining force of their bodies, which sustains their existence apart from the soul which animates them. Also derived from these klipot are the souls of all living creatures that are unclean and forbidden to be eaten, and the sustaining force of their bodies. Anything not kosher is coming, its energy is three is the lower level of the three impure klipas. And the existence and life of all forbidden vegetation too, such as Arla, the first 3 years fruit of a tree, when you can't have the tree's fruit, and a mixture of grain seeds in a vineyard and so forth are derived from these klipot, as is written in Eitz Chaim, Portal 49, chapter 6. Similarly, the existence and life of any act, utterance, or thought in violation of any one of the 365 biblical prohibitions, as well as the rabbinic offshoots, are all derived from these three impure klipot, as is written there, end of chapter 5. He gives an example of all the four stratas of existence, right? You got human beings, you have animals, you have vegetation, and then doesn't mention minerals, but whatever. The point is, anything that is not anything in this world that is in its state not meant to be used for a mitzvah, right? It's not meant to be used, a mitzvah as this kind of surrendering connection to God.
What can't be used for this?
Oh, we'll get to that tomorrow. But what do you mean? You can't use a treif piece of meat?
Yes, you can if the person's sick, gonna die.
It's going to talk about that, actually. It's going to talk about that, but that's not a mitzvah.
Save your life.
It's a good question. We'll get to it. It's going to talk about it tomorrow.
Okay.
But for example, you can't take a fruit that's not allowed to be eaten and eat it to make a bracha on it. It's not in that state. It's not allowed to be used for a divine connection. Now, I just want to end off with a sidebar from the Steinsaltz Tanya. I thought was also very important. Why are we mentioning all these utterly impure klipas? Right? The energy of sin. Of sin or of sin. For a Jew, the energy of sin, or for the greater world, the energy of total concealment of the divine. Like, why is that relevant to this book? Isn't this book called the Book of the Beinoni? The Book of the Beinoni, if you think about it, is a pretty high level guy. He's trying to, a guy or a girl, trying to live their life in a very humble and connected way to God. So why are you talking about the stuff that he has to stay away from and it's off limits, right? I mean, it's not it's a klutz kasha. It's an obvious question. So the answer is, one basic answer is that, of course, you have to know the Beinoni is someone who doesn't necessarily sin, but he has to know he could sin, and he could fall into the sin and be siphoning life off from the God holiness to the three impure klipas. And here's another, I think is more important. Tanya is a very optimistic book. It's not a fearful, like, stay away from the evil. Everything, even in the stuff that is off limits, like we just talked about, the stuff that is either sinful or just impure, it's not supposed to stay sinful and impure. Meaning, let's talk about our relationship with the nations of the world, right? We're saying a Jew is chosen to be the one to connect the world to God in this kind of very high level way. What about the nations of the world? Well, they can't? Yeah, too bad. They just get to be part of the scaffolding. So no, everything's ultimately, even things that are impure or off limits, are meant to be elevated. Understand? But as he said in the gloss, everything's meant to be elevated. Everything has the infinite oneness of God in it. The point we're saying is that, okay, what's the work to bring everything up there, to bring it up to Hashem? You don't make a bacon cheeseburger elevated by eating it. Jews make it. At the same time, I think by the Jews staying away from the bacon cheeseburger, and that it gets elevated. And the fact that bacon cheeseburger can give life to non-Jews, and that's totally allowed. And the non-Jews can be part of this, making this world, this amazing world. it's more indirect in a sense. Saying it's not, you don't directly engage it. Anyways, I think the main point of this chapter, just to end off, because we don't want to take too much time, is that you have an animal soul. Animal soul has a lot of self-serving capabilities, the shadow side of the 10 spheros. And anytime you, and it gets worse, it gets harder. Anytime you do something that is non-God directed, which basically means it's you directed on some level, that is an expression of the animal soul. And our job, we will learn. So that's the main point. And the stakes are big. Anything that is not a surrender to God activity is an expression of the animal soul. That's the main point. I think yesterday was made the main point of the chapter. Today is more